Welcome to I Communicate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN. To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Mark Altman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the I Communicate Mindset Go radio show. I'm your host, Mark Altman. Happy to be back with you on this Thursday afternoon. And we're going to continue our conversation, pick up right where we left off last week, talking about trust. Got a lot of positive feedback from our listeners and how much that helped them in their job, and whether they're in leadership or sales or even in their daily life. So thanks again for joining us. And, you know, being here in New England, we're going to start with a phrase that I think many people are familiar with, and certainly Patriots fans, and it's the phrase, "In Bill we trust." And you know, that phrase really, I was thinking driving in this morning, talking about how, you know, the Patriots coach and de facto general manager, Bill Belichick, we really blindly trust him. I mean, here we are in a situation right now where he drafted a receiver in this year's draft, N'Keal Harry, and his track record for drafting receivers is actually pretty bad, and whether it's drafting them or developing them, but we blindly trust him. And if Bill says this is the guy, or this is the right free agent pickup, or this is the right trade, with many other general managers or coaches, we would question it. But because of his pattern and track record of proof of precedent setting, we tend to blindly trust. And this is actually referred to as a term called captainitis. And the term captainitis first came from it basically means your team members blindly deferring to a boss, regardless of what they think. So you could engage in healthy dialogue. You could receive a different perspective, ideas, thoughts from your team members. But captainitis is blindly trusting because of their authority or their precedent. Now, this term came from some airplane crashes where crew members knew that the captain was making a wrong-headed decision, and they exhibited passivity and didn't really speak up and didn't advocate for themselves, even though they knew it was the wrong thing to do. And in a handful of cases, this resulted in a plane crash. So this concept of captainitis, whether it's with a leader, an airplane captain, a coach, or general manager in sports, it's a real thing, and it happens all the time. And that's why when we talk about leadership skills and emotional intelligence, we often talk about the ability to advocate for yourself and knowing when are those opportunities that you can feel safe and comfortable speaking up. Now, one of the interesting things about leadership is the concept of influence. And with influence, there's something I've done quite a lot of research on called Cialdini's 6 Principles of Influence. And one of them is using authority. And the best leaders are the ones that use authority without actually being in authority. And one of the best expressions I've ever been told was actually from my high school accounting teacher, who once told the class, he said, "Don't confuse kindness with weakness." And that phrase has always stuck with me, because I think when people are in authority, when they start exhibiting characteristics such as empathy, self-awareness, self-regulation, you know, all fundamental characteristics of emotional intelligence, they think that makes them look weak. And, you know, you hear the words respect thrown around when it comes to authority, and you've got to earn respect. You don't command respect. We hear that all the time. But when you think about someone you report to, for our listeners out there today, and think of the things that, qualities and characteristics that make you respect and authority, think about your core values. Think about the perceptions and feelings you have about authority at work. And if it's, whether it's micromanaging, whether it's being intimidating, whether it's using guilt, whatever those things are that help you as a leader command authority, emotional intelligence is the opposite of that. And what Cialdini talks about in his principle of influence is, how can you be a trusted expert? How can you earn the trust while being in authority? without showing those authoritative traits. So what I thought we would build on today from last week and getting into the show is whenever I ask someone, how do you prove trust? People look at me as if I have three heads, because that's a really hard thing to do. Usually we build trust based on long-term relationships, experiences we have with the other person. If it's in a company situation, it would be customer experiences we have with that company. And the whole concept of writing a testimonial or doing a video testimonial is, do you trust that person or that company? Are they credible enough to warrant you advocating and speaking out on their behalf? And one of the colleagues that I work with and do some coaching for, he owns a video production company, and he does great work around video testimonials. But one of the things I always tell him is, part of the reason why people are hesitant to make a video testimonial is not because they don't trust the company, not because they don't want to do something nice. It's because they're not confident enough to know how to put their words together and articulate and advocate for that company. So today I thought we would talk about some key elements of trust. And the first one we're going to start with is open communication. Now that's a big word. That's a big phrase, I should say. It's a big expression. And when it comes to open communication, it could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And we've talked on past shows about words or phrases that are open to interpretation. So when I think of open communication, I'm thinking of something at a very high level. And it all starts with a phrase you're all familiar with called the open door policy. And the open door policy, I think if you survey 100 people and ask them what they associate with the open door policy, they will answer that it's a leader or a boss that has his door or her door open in their office so you feel comfortable and they're available. They have the time to come in and talk with you, or for you to come in and talk with them. The tricky thing about the open door policy is, to me, there's a big misconception because that doesn't create open communication. The concept of an open door policy is that the leader has allegedly created a culture, created an environment where you feel comfortable, and safe that by coming into that open door, by coming into that office, it will be worthwhile because that leader in turn will receive your feedback. They might hopefully will act on your feedback if possible. And so to me, the highest level you can get for open communication is initiating feedback. Now, take a step back for a moment. How many of you out there that have a significant other of some kind would go home tonight and say to your significant other, geez, honey, I've been thinking, how could I be a better husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, what have you? You would never do. Most people wouldn't even consider doing that. As a matter of fact, when I bring that up in our corporate trainings, a lot of the times the answer I get is a big chuckle like, oh, I would never do that. And part of the reason why people are very hesitant to initiate feedback is because when you do, there's a fear that the person receiving the feedback will hold a grudge, will react poorly, it'll feel like a waste of time. So having the confidence and courage to initiate feedback is very rare. So in the workplace, I hear a lot of leaders telling me, oh no, my team comes and gives me feedback. But I'm actually talking about unsolicited feedback. For example, let's say you run a meeting and at the end of the meeting, someone feels comfortable to come up to you as a leader and say, geez, Bill, I've been thinking, I've watched you run a few meetings, and I thought it would be worthwhile to make the meetings more engaging and effective if you tried the following 1, 2, or 3 scenarios. That is very, very rare because when a person's in a position of authority, to question their approach, their strategy, their process is risky. So as a leader, when I talk about open communication, if you've created a culture where people are coming up and giving you an unsolicited feedback, that to me is the ultimate in open communication. And a final thought on this before we go to our first break, when it comes to initiating feedback, here are the characteristics that make that alleged open door policy or that open communication stick. One is loyalty. So do people keep their word Do they honor what they say? Are they going to follow through with what they commit to? 2, are they not going to judge? Are they going to seek to actually understand without judgment? And that's big because we know how body language and communication can really define people's comfort level, what you say, how you say it, in terms of how comfortable they are in sharing information. And, in conjunction with that is laughing with someone, not at someone, because, again, no one wants to risk being made fun of or feeling stupid. And lastly is, if you have an issue or a concern, you're talking directly with the source. If you're giving feedback to a leader and you've already gone to a couple of people to complain before you're initiating that feedback to the leader's already going to have their defenses up in frustration. So there's a commitment on your part. It's a two-way street, as communication always is, that are you going first to the source to try to resolve this issue so there can be that open communication and initiating feedback. So when we talk about elements of trust, we've just covered the first one, but there's some really key elements, and as you're listening today, think about if you're doing those things. If you are a leader, are you doing those things? And if you're someone who reports, which most of us are, to a leader, think about those characteristics that you're demonstrating and that hopefully the leader is demonstrating. So we're going to go to our first break. This is the Mindset Go radio show. I'm your host, Mark Altman, and we'll be back after the break.